All right, so dear Explorers, welcome once again to Efecto Cascada. This is a podcast from Exploro where we dive into the forefront of innovation, share insights from entrepreneurs, and uncover cascade funding opportunities. As you may all know already, in this podcast, we try to explore the latest trends onto the digital stream, the arts, and, well, the latest technologies that are shaping our future. So broadcasting from Pamplona, we aim to reach a global audience starting from European Union projects. All right, so today we're delving into the fascinating intersection of video games, local innovation, and European research. So today's episode is going to focus on GameR, a Horizon Europe and UKRI-funded project designed to strengthen local and regional video game clusters. So joining us, here we have two extraordinary guests. These are Anastasia Barakova. She's a project coordinator at Czech Game Developers Association with a wealth of experience in digitalization, design, and international collaboration. And then there's Martin Lynagh. He's a lecturer in game production at Abertay University, whose two-decade career spans hit titles like Little Big Planet and cutting-edge research in game development. So today we'll explore GameR's mission to empower local gaming clusters, drive innovation, and create sustainable growth. So just go ahead and grab your headphones, whether you're an industry leader or a curious listener, and let's dive in. So let's go. Right, so welcome Anastasia and Martin. How are you?
Very good, thank you very much.
Hi, Paula. Thank you for having us in the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much for being with us today. It's a great pleasure. So could you please introduce yourselves to the audience and maybe share a bit about your background?
Anastasia?
Yeah, I'll go first. So hello, everyone listening. My name is Anastasia, and I actually have a background in linguistics. And to be precise, translation and interpretation. The industry I started working with, and the major one for me was for a long time the automotive industry. And through digital projects, design projects there, I got to transition to the game industry, which is a very interesting but a very long story. So to cut it short, I got to work in the game industry about 5 years ago, and I'm really enjoying it now.
How about you, Martin?
I have a similarly circuitous kind of route into the games industry. Actually, I studied my original degrees like a liberal arts degree, a humanities degree. Mm-hmm. And I did a conversion course into IT. I worked as a programmer in like regular software development for a few years, and then in the late 90s, I lived in the States for a little while doing that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to move back to Scotland, and there was a job for a company in Dunfermline that making mobile games, and this is way before the iPhone. This is, more than a decade before the iPhone came out. And I applied and we moved back. I started off as a programmer and then moved into production, so project management side of things. And I had a long career doing that. I moved down to Guildford, another cluster, interestingly enough, of game development in the UK. To work at Media Molecule. I was lucky enough to work on the first two iterations of the Little Big Planet series, Little Big Planet 1 and 2, and Tearaway as well for the Sony Vita, which was an old handheld, that really missed device. I think people quite liked it. And then I moved into CG and animation for a little bit, a bit of freelancing, and in 2018 I joined Abertay. One of my colleagues, somebody I'd worked with years before, a good friend of mine, was a lecturer at Abertay and told me of a job that was available, and I've really enjoyed. I've been doing that for going on 6 years, 5.5 years now. I didn't think I would become an academic later in life, to be honest, but I'm really enjoying it. I enjoy the teaching side specifically, and and research as well, of course. But there's quite a lot of industry outreach, and that we do in our faculty, and I do specifically, and that's something I really enjoy, because you can keep a bit of a foot in both camps and make sure that that what we're doing, because Abertay's quite central, or certainly very much involved in the local scene and nationally, I would say, that you get to see what people are doing, and calibrate what we are doing to fit in with that, as it were.
Okay, so may I ask, what drew you to working with European Union projects, and more specifically, how did you find this synergy between video games and European Union initiatives?
Yeah, well, actually, there is a very simple reason for this connection between video games and the European Horizon project that we are now involved in altogether. It has to do with some of the topics that were outlined by the European Commission. And the project applications had to resonate with those topics, or some main keywords given by the European Commission for a certain time period. And so the project period that we are in right now was a period described by the European Commission as a period of video game industry, and also digital heritage, something like this. So basically, the way that our project application was going was very much given by the framework of the European Commission for this specific project period. And and I think that was one factor, and another factor was I mean, like in the project application phase, or even earlier in the ideation phase, there was a lot of networking going on, and a lot of like partners meeting each other independently, and then connecting each other over certain topics and areas of interest and expertise and so on. And I think I like to think of it as a certain process where some magic is taking place, or some certain chemistry is taking place, because right now in our project consortium, we have such an amazing and diverse group of people, professionals and organizations from different countries. And it's amazing how all of them came together. And so some of them have more expertise in more like academic fields and research, and this is their like strong thing. And some of them, like us, for example, and in the project I represent the Czech Game Developers Association. So we are more the industry people, and we know the local scene. We know we have some overview what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the world with the video games. And so this unique connection will probably work in a way which will bring the best benefits to the project. That's my view. But what do you think, Martin? Would you expect such a connection? I mean, video games world and European projects.
I think it totally makes sense. From the perspective of Europe having quite a vital video games industry, and I find this project particularly interesting because of the locations that it's looking at. I mean, obviously, I think this is very true in the UK, until maybe a lesser extent in other European countries, but London is or the capital city, the metropolis, is often, such a magnet for activity, economic activity and talent and creative industries, especially. The UK has clusters all over, but it's interesting to look at places like Dundee, like Brno, and we'll get onto this later. I know that we're going to be talking about why the locations were selected. That are maybe a bit overlooked, that are maybe places that are out of the spotlight, as it were, but yet have the conditions have arisen, the material conditions have arisen that creative industries like the games industry have been able to pull talent there in such a way. And I think that's really interesting. And also just to echo the kind of meeting of minds and it's almost an alchemy that's going on with the different partners and the process. We were talking about the consortium meeting we had in Dundee recently. I found that really fascinating. Just the different perspectives and skill sets and locations and cultural differences that all came together as part of that. It's an opportunity for us all, to make those connections and to try and use them in our work going forward, because there are a lot of places in Europe that do have this kind of these kind of common conditions, these common areas that we can definitely learn from each other and maybe learn how to replicate that elsewhere.
Let's dive into it. So, GameYR, what would you say is the main goal of this project, and how does it exactly aim to strengthen local and regional video game clusters across Europe?
I would say, well, the short answer would be, policy recommendations. But I think there's a focus on how this can be replicated elsewhere, and not even specifically in the video games industry, with other creative industries as well. So we're trying to identify, practices that are common across the different clusters. I think certainly what we see in Dundee, there's a huge amount of symbiosis between higher education and business. Abertay is very much a big part of the cluster. A lot of things go through Abertay.
Right.
A lot of people that work in the industry obviously came from there or studied there.
Interesting.
Also staff, going back and forward between industry and academia as well.
The way this project really stands out, and the way we add value through our research, is also thanks to the fact that not only we create, or we're set out on a path to create new policy recommendations, but we also are looking at what has already been written, researched, and recommended. So we are going over the existing documents, policies on the regional level, on local level, and we are trying to summarize that and build on that, so that we are not starting from zero, but we are actually building on what is already out there, and through that we are creating more value.
To be honest, I read through European Union projects every day, and I've never seen anything like such, like anything. It's a very curious connection, because every time you think of, video games, you're already thinking on the development of it, but you never go ahead and look ahead onto the actual regulations of it. So helping these people, I think it's, in my opinion, in my sincere opinion, I think it aligns on nowadays fast-pacing world where, for example, AI or, all technologies are just evolving too fast, and we are not sitting there with policymakers, right, to have a proper regulation of it. But what would you say the specific needs that GameER is addressing?
I think that's still really in progress. Paula, I don't know if you can share your perspective on that, Anastasia. What do you feel the way things are headed with the research so far?
I'm just thinking right now, like, who will benefit most from this project and from the project results. And this is something that I think important to keep in mind when working on something like this, because there is so much research that has already been done. There is so many academic papers. There's so many things online, and there is just like organizations like, for example, EGDF, the European Game Developers Federation, and the only thing that they are doing is they are mapping and researching and comparing and coordinating between those European actors and so on. So I think the main benefit of this project will be the fact that, for example, we were able to get on board the Brno cluster and the municipality of Fundão in Portugal, which are on a totally different timeline, let's say, compared to the Paris cluster or Dundee. And we give them a chance to actually get inspiration from those clusters, which have much longer history, much more experience, many more people working for them, and have already been historically established in the region. And so that those emerging clusters are learning and growing through this project, and this growth is sustainable. And so this is the first thing. And another thing is that other clusters are emerging as a result of this project. And well, maybe I will just, I'm jumping too much, but the ultimate outcome of this project will be a kind of an online tool where which we are concepting as a kind of a tool that the policy and decision makers will use when making decisions related to video game industry clusters and policy. And so our vision is that this tool will live on after the project time, and this will be the kind of legacy. This will be something that will live much longer than the project itself, because there are certain you have a certain framework to a European project, right? At some point it will be over. The reports will be filed, and on paper it is over, but there has to be something that keeps living, and there has to be something that serves other regions, other clusters, serves as a source of inspiration, as a source of knowledge and experience that we gather right now during this project, in the project process. So I think these are the biggest benefits of the GameER project, and we will see. I mean, I think a lot of things are also, and this is very interesting, and this is a very curious thing about huge projects like this. A lot of things are figured out in the process. So for some things, we have very straight, very precise understanding of how it will work and look like and so on. But some things, they are just shaped in the process. And this is, I think, this is sometimes a thing which makes you nervous, of course, but it's also amazing because when you put so many minds together, and all of our partners are amazing professionals. Like I'm just thinking right now, what are the chances that I would meet Martin in my life, professionally or personally? The chances are probably close to zero or even less. But here we are in one project, and it turns out that we speak the same language. Yeah, it's the language of video games, it's the language of creative industries, and so on. So these are all, and I would keep talking about European projects like this because I have done some of them in my life, and I started with Erasmus project and student mobility. And this is where a lot of my positivity probably also comes because during when back in the day when I used to work with students, part of my jobs was encouraging them to go out there abroad and take this trip, go there, say goodbye to their comfort zone, and just leave this new experience and take this leap and come back a new person. And since that time, I really only see the benefits of such experiences and such big projects.
Wow, Anastasia. Yeah, I gotta say,
that's such a good answer.
You inspired me a lot, and probably the audience. But you said very interesting things, such as, well, I imagine that this is just a huge project, and you're, as you said, concepting it still. But once looking to the big picture, there's this all 6 clusters united, right, which we're gonna talk further on, for, well, one reason, to help society and the video game clusters industry. Linking it with what you just said, so the project focuses on 6 video game clusters across Europe. Did you have a specific criteria to select these? And what makes them so unique, right?
My understanding was that, but partly that was to, I mean, we're looking at places that have something that where we're looking for commonalities to see what could be replicated, so that other people can learn, or other places can learn from places where clusters have developed. Obviously, some of the places that are involved are places that are still developing, and as you know, and your excellent answer there, you talked about Paris and Dundee being maybe different from Fundeo, etc. So there are maybe different levels of development there, but that's interesting in its own right, I think, because you are looking at local industries that are maybe at different stages, and where they are, and the historical aspect of. I'm really interested in what that is going to turn up when we move on to that work package. I think that's going to be quite. There's going to be a lot of stuff comes out there that is will be really valuable in terms of the toolkit that we're going to be producing. But my understanding was that the places that were selected, or initially the criteria, you were looking at places that were maybe had deindustrialization, or where there was an element of they were slightly marginalized. I'm not saying completely
widening, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Outside of capital cities, etc. I mean, we've got Paris as a cluster, so that doesn't particularly hold true across all 6. But there's an element. There's certainly an element of that, and it's where generating these lessons and these methods that can maybe be applied to similar places elsewhere. was my understanding of it, but you may have a better insight on it than me, Anastasia, to be perfectly honest.
So I must say it was a very organic process, because there was a lot of networking, a lot of getting to know each other, and of course the clusters that are now represented in the project, they were willing to be there. So they would have to be out there looking for partners and projects to be a part of, and for opportunities to grow. And so, for example, if I mention again the Brno cluster in the Czech Republic, or the Fundão municipality in Portugal, both are very similar in many ways. Like, although it's totally different countries, totally different cultural background aspects, anything, but the way they struggle with the talent retention, the way they are resolved to tackle issues like attracting companies, attracting talent, attracting and retaining students, establishing companies, and comparing themselves with the big cities in their region or in the country. So there is a lot of parallels there, and it's just amazing how they, just from each other, the two of them can learn, and how they can actually try and take something from what the other partner is doing, and try that in their region and so on. So so that's just amazing to see them work together. And at the same time, yes, as I said at the beginning, the process of selection was very organic. So the clusters would have to be open to cooperation, to be looking for other partners, to be out there. There is, of course, this platform which is established by the European Commission, which enabled all this networking and actually those connections between different actors. And of course, Abertay University colleagues played a huge role in the way the project application was shaped, and how they brought all those players on board, if I can use this word in this context, because
I think
the video games we are talking.
Yeah.
And so because it was a long process, right? Like putting a project like this together, I mean, we are talking about, I think, not even months, but it was probably in the heads of our Abertay colleagues for years. Some ideas and some concepts were there, but now you have to find the right partners, you have to find the time, the resources, and it takes a lot of energy. And so I just want to give a credit to our Abertay colleagues, who were amazing in bringing all those amazing partners on board, putting the project application together. And for example, the Portuguese colleagues with the Fundão municipality joined us 1 week before the deadline. So that's just amazing.
Oh, wow.
how probably it's something I shouldn't mention.
No, that's fine. We'll...
Too late now.
Oh God.
Just cut it if anyway.
But that must have been...
I think it's just it's just an example of how coordinated this is. I mean, we were able to identify how this partner fits our consortium, how it could benefit from the project, get them on board, get all the formal stuff from them, and put the project application out there. And when we received the positive answer from the European Commission, I mean, I think we were all just super excited.
Yeah.
I think for me personally, and also professionally, obviously, it's great to be involved in a European project. Again, we were talking a little bit about this kind of stuff before we started recording, but from the perspective of still feeling European, but not being in the in the European Union anymore. I won't say any more about that, but it definitely to be able to collaborate with with people in that in the European area. It feels right, and it feels like what we should be doing. To be perfectly honest, I think having a global perspective is important as well. But when you do that and neglect the regional or international, European-wide perspective, I think that's a mistake. So it's great to make these connections and to be able to see places that are, there's a lot of similarities. There's important differences as well, but that's one of the things that we're looking to analyze, I guess. To actually, so that we can learn.
Yeah, but here's a huge lesson that I think it can be applied to any sort of field, because when you are creating this application, you were saying, Anastasia, you had the idea, but you gotta materialize that. And well, it doesn't have to be easy to find the right clusters, the right partners. But it's beautiful to know that even if there's cultural shock between countries, in this case, there's common ideas that can shape, right, the project development. Which brings me to ask you, do you have any expectations or any ideas on how can these clusters can drive innovation? Like anything that has popped your mind already?
I think, innovation and the video games industry is obviously something that's driven at various different levels. There's a technological element to it. There's certainly, business models are constantly, well, not constantly change, but evolve and change and change as time goes on, which is maybe more of a national or international, global thing, because it is a global industry. I think that the production side of it, the actual making of games, from my perspective, the innovation comes in, it's processes and tools and the way that the way that you organize people to and creative endeavors together. And it's what I'm really interested in seeing is how that's driven in different, cultural spaces, and different areas. I think being able to study how the clusters work together, and there's going to be things that we're all going to learn from each other, going forward. I can't say what those things are yet, but
just wanted to know if you have any.
Yeah, we are kind of very mid flow with that sort of stuff. But I find that personally very interesting, because that's my focus, as a researcher, and my career has always been in that. It's I was less on the business side or financial side, and always very much in, I worked with the development team. So I'd work with artists, programmers, designers, QA, all the people that are involved in making games. And I've seen evolutions and changes and innovations and the way that that people collaborate. One of the interesting things, I think, and whether you would call this an innovation or not is maybe a question for you guys, but the virtualization of studio culture across, especially since the pandemic, but it was happening before then. And, you know, we're seeing a bit of a pendulum swing back in some places, but generally it seems to be something that's here to stay. And, you know, the processes that have to support that, you know, it's something that even in, you know, in academia at Dundee University where I work, not Dundee University, Abertay University in Dundee where I work, sorry. I don't work at Dundee University. I'm not stolen valor from them.
Yeah.
You know, I live in Glasgow, which is 90 miles away. So, you know, 120 kilometers away, whatever. So I don't go every day, but I'm able to effectively contribute to research projects, to teach, and to, you know, play a full part, I think, in the life of the institution. Despite that, it doesn't make it easier, I would say, but organizations have to adapt. And I think, particularly, I just remember the point I was trying to make about that was when you look at a cluster, for instance, in Dundee, there's a real talent pool, but not everybody is working for companies in Dundee anymore. I think maybe 10 years ago, you would have people that were freelance who would maybe, you know, they would still be able to do that, generally very experienced people, and they would travel, but they would do a lot of their work, you know, the work at their home base. Now it's quite common for somebody to be working at, say, a London studio, or, you know, it could be anywhere, you know, time zones permitting, really, that, you know, who are maybe based in Dundee. They may be going to Abertay University. But the company that they work for isn't actually a Dundee company. I mean, there's still plenty of that, I would say, but it's one of those things that, you know, the idea of a cluster becomes fuzzier at that point. You know, are we talking about companies? Are we talking about, you know, other actors? Are we talking about people who are, you know, just game developers who are actual workers in the industry? So yeah, I think that's an interesting innovation that's happened in the last, and you know, in the way that people work and where they're kind of domiciled, as it were. You know, and I think that blurs the boundaries a little bit of traditional cultural industries. I mean, you know, there's a lot of research on this, and there's a lot of work being done. But when we frame the questions about, you know, what the cluster is, that's something that I think we have to take into consideration. That strangely, you know, labour's more mobile in that sense, and that it's not as tied to a geographical location if you don't have to come into the office every day, type thing. But that's maybe not the answer you were looking for in terms of innovation. I don't know.
No, it is. I mean, it's just usually we have the perspective of European projects that had already been resolved or finished. But in this case, it's interesting to get to know how the process of generating the project itself from the very beginning it's been made. So yeah, appreciate it, and especially coming from two experts like you. By the way, is there any creative dimension to the project itself? Because I know that you include some analysis when it comes to creative and cultural industries clusters. So could you elaborate a bit on this methodology and perhaps explain to the audience what this is all about?
I think a lot of that will surface the historical investigation, you know, looking at how clusters developed. I mean, taking Dundee as an example. So the elements, or some of the elements that we see as being decisive, and allowing a game development cluster to develop, was one of Dundee's kind of existing industries, which is publishing. So DC Thomson, the Dundee's known for its the 3Js. I actually can't remember the third J, but two of them are in journalism, and it was basically a lot of industry based on textiles, and when that declined in the second half of the 20th century, the effects weren't immediately felt, because Dundee was quite had Jam is the other one, by the way, which is irrelevant to my point, but it's just surfaced in my head. There was emerging technology sector in the city. Timex, who made the ZX Spectrum, those old 8-bit computers, and NCR were big employers. So there was an element where, rather than what we saw in many places, where I'm from, Glasgow, what you saw was managed decline when heavy industry left, when shipbuilding became less of an issue, or less of a activity that was competitive, and when government stopped supporting industry in the 80s. You saw a precipitous drop in employment and living standards. That still happened in Dundee, but it took longer. But the two elements that come together that I think helped form the cluster, and this is a bit of conjecture and discussion with colleagues from some of the stuff that we've been looking at, is because we had DC Thomson, because we had this kind of comics powerhouse. So I would call them graphic novels, but things like the Beano, etc., and the various publications that DC Thomson made. There was an artistic talent pool there, who you wouldn't necessarily think. I mean, nobody knew what video games were. I suppose in the 70s and 80s, and certainly public policy wouldn't have been thinking about that, because it was such a such a young industry, particularly in the UK. I would imagine, but the whole idea that came together with the technology sector that was there, that formed this creative industry, this cultural industry, really. And I think the culture side definitely comes from the publishing. The technology side meant that the hardware was there. One of my colleagues, Mona Bosdog, is an academic at Abertay, did a really excellent project on the women of Timex. So people who were employed making these 8-bit computers, making the Spectrum. And one of the things that comes out in her research is quite a lot of people, the availability of the ZX Spectrum was very high in the Dundee area, because they would disappear from shipments, etc. They would maybe fall off the lorry, etc. And it ended up there being a far higher penetration into households in the local area than would normally be the case. And that might be something like that, illicit procurement of the actual hardware itself, might actually be something that was a factor in developing the skills that the industry needed to form. And I don't think you can look at those things in isolation. You'd have to look at what the publishing industry was nationally and internationally in the 1980s, for that part. But it was definitely at a period when Dundee was going through a lot of changes, that video games emerged as something that would happen, and it was definitely after the turn of I think Dundee had pretty much full employment throughout the 1970s. It was only in the 80s that things really in common with most of Scotland, to be honest, was really badly hit by the sort of neoliberal turn and changes in the way that government dealt with industry in general in the UK. And the technology side was one of the things that kept it going. But I think without having such a strong art school like Duncan and Jordanson and such a strong tradition of commercial art, that those two things really came together to be seminal and the formation of the cluster. And I think that's where that kind of artistic dimension really emerges. I mean, I think we will be looking at what people are doing currently in each of the clusters as well. But I think maybe the focus is more on the surrounding elements, the conditions, the criteria, things that policy, not even just policymakers, but decision makers. So decision makers can be actors across the industry, can't they, Anastasia? Really, it's not just people in the responsible for enterprise funding, etc. It's people in industry as well, and even trade unions and actors across the throughout the industry. I mean, I hope people will, beyond the policy making tier, will look at our outputs and be inspired by them. I suppose serendipity, there could be plenty of unintended consequences that we don't envision coming out of the work. Well, I hope so. I hope so anyway, as long as they're positive. But we'll see.
Yeah, always.
Coming back to your question about the creative aspect of it, I mean, when we are talking about game industry, at least here in the Czech Republic, it falls under the umbrella of the cultural creative industries, and it is also represented in the local Chamber of Commerce under this sector. So there is, for example, a lot of competition going on with the filming industry here on the national level, and we feel like there is a lot of forms of support that exist here for the film industry, but not that many that are available to game developers. So as representatives of this industry here in the Czech Republic, we joined the project offering our local expertise and our best knowledge and experience to the project consortium. And I was just thinking about the Brno cluster, and the actual building where the people are is a very curious mix of very creative individuals. It's a hub for creativity. I cannot call it a different way, because it is. It's all sort of artists, it's musicians, it's designers, both game designers and textiles, and it's painters, and it's just a bunch of creative people that were encouraged to come and have their workshop there, have their space at this center in Brno. And once you do something like this, you put these amazing creative people together, and you give them a chance to have their space and to have the freedom to create but also cooperate together and experiment and so on. So you give a lot of space, and you give a lot of outlets for creativity, I think. And that's exactly what happened in Brno, and it's not so long ago. So we are going to have our next project meeting in Brno in March this year. And I'm very much looking forward to welcoming our colleagues because they will see how the thing we are talking about, the cluster itself. I mean, what do you imagine when someone says cluster? Probably something huge, something with a lot of people running around, a lot of papers, a lot of work on the computer going on. So there, you will see what's the word that artists are using? An atelier for creative work. And yes, and it's all supported and boosted by the local South Moravian Innovation Center. So I guess if they are supporting like this on a huge scale, then they probably see certain benefits in creating something like this and developing something like this in the region. So it definitely falls into one of the city strategies, region strategies, country strategies even. I'm sure they worked closely together with the Ministry of Culture to see what's the vision for developing something like this in the Brno region. And the result of it is that some very talented individuals came together, started creating indie games, started cooperating, experimenting. And what we are seeing now is that very organically, they formed indie teams around those project ideas that they had. And with the right space and the right tools, they are developing their games, which are now showcased in different industry events and conferences. And on top of that, there is an indie game accelerator, which has now celebrated its second birthday, I think, in Brno. So we can see that we can already see some results, and there have already been huge benefits to the region and to the people involved, but also to the way we drive creativity.
So as I was telling you in the beginning, here's the game. Here's the tradition that we do on every podcast. So you're gonna have to answer a question from the previous guest, and then you're gonna be the ones raising a question for the next one. This is crazy because I didn't choose, or I didn't pick the time span to chat with you and take the right question from the guest that was raised for you, but it's very related to you. So it comes from Vanessa Hanneschlager. She's part of another European Union project called Realities in Transition. And her question is, she'd like to know what your favorite virtual world is. So for instance, what your favorite virtual world is. So for instance, any sort. Can either be meta or, for instance, mine, I said, was The Sims, the game.
Yep.
I would say that my favorite virtual world is the world of the book that I'm currently reading. So if you ask me at any time point, that would be the world of this book. And I think like right now, that would be the world of Ready Player One.
Which one?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One. And those who know.
No idea. Okay. If you know, you know, right? Okay.
All right.
Get it. How about you, Martin?
What about you, Martin?
I've taken it a bit more literally. I'm not. I mean, taking the virtual world thing too literally, I don't really play online games as such. As much, I'm much more a fan of like single player experiences, and I think the one that made, unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity to play that many games anymore.
Yeah,
just time
don't have the
commitments.
time to.
I'm sure you guys understand. But the thing that made me the virtual world, or the single player experience game that made the biggest impression on me in the past decade was Disco Elysium. I absolutely loved that game. It's such a literate expression of what a video game can be. And it's interesting that it's a CRPG. It doesn't really do anything different in terms of the mechanics of a CRPG. It's the writing and the setting and the world building and everything. I just found it an absolute, pleasure to engage with. I thought the ideas it brings up, and the way that it, it's almost like, there are things in the real world that appear in the game and they just call them by the same name. Yeah, it is a completely
nice.
It's a completely foreign, it's not our reality. The game's setting, but there are elements, and it just made a huge impression on me. The quality of the writing and everything else. I think they managed to trap lightning in a bottle with that. So I'd say that's my favorite virtual world. I'd hang out in Revachol.
Good.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, these were unexpected answers, I must say. Okay, so now it's your turn. Now you have the coin. So what's the piece of advice that you'd like to give to the audience, which are called Splotters, by the way?
I think this is something that I always see when we work on student projects. One of the things that I do, I run the professional project module at Abertay, third year module, where we've got multidisciplinary teams. They work with local and not so local video game companies to produce a prototype, a vertical slice. And the thing that I always find interesting is people stick to their seed ideas too often sometimes. So they go in with a very preconceived notion of what they're going to make. And often in the process of iteration, you will uncover possibilities that you hadn't initially considered. So always have an open mind when you start on a project. Always have an open mind. Always be learning from what you're doing and perceiving the opportunities that are appearing, from the work the work you're doing. That's my bit of homespun advice.
Don't be afraid of big projects, big ideas, and big steps. Just there is a book which is called Think Big. And I think that's what it comes to, and not only in European project, but also on generally in life, career. Yeah,
there's
don't
this
be
saying,
afraid of it.
Yeah, there's this saying, it's fake it till you make it, right? You can, I'd say that I agree with you guys. Sometimes there's this vertigo feeling or this imposter syndrome that we have whenever we have to confront things. But if we propose ourselves that we are capable of it, we'll always manage to do it. So what's the fun fact? Because you had one, right, Martin?
I had one. Yeah. It was Dundee related because I was doing a bit of Dundee research before we came in here, and it was. I think it's a fun fact because I was exposed to the work of this person at quite a young age. But William McGonagall, who's considered to be by many people the worst poet in the English language, was born and lived in Dundee, famous for his poem, The Tay Bridge Disaster, which manages to make something that would have been a very grim event at the time quite hilarious, because it's so badly written. It's the only thing he understood about poetry, really. It doesn't scan, there's no meter. He just knew that things had to rhyme, and he believed in himself, and he faked it till he kind of made it. Literally. I suppose you do become something by doing it. I think there's an element of that, but yeah, William McGonagall's maybe a warning of that there can be a downside to that in terms of a sort of Dunning-Kruger thing. But who's to say? Because we're still talking about, or I'm still talking about him more than 100 years after he passed. So maybe I'm the fool in that situation, and he is truly immortal.
Okay, thank you for saying that. If you have any specific quotes of him, I'd like to get to read them.
I can say that the at the end of each verse of the Tay Bridge Disaster, and I don't know if this will be, I mean, it's funny in English, but it ends with the line, on that fateful day in 1849 that we will remember for a very long time. And that's repeated like 13 or 14 times in the poem. And the effect when you read it is just, I don't know. It had an effect on me when I was 8 that I was just like, this is so funny, because this guy obviously doesn't know what he's doing, but he has such confidence.
I get it. No, but I mean, there's the message there. If you believe in yourself, I mean, people will someday. Yes. Even if it's crazy.
For sure.
Right. And just to tie everything up, what's your question going to be for the next guest?
I had a very specific question that might be maybe too personal, but you can tell me if this is the case. I'd like to know what the first creative project the next person who worked on, what was the first creative project that they got paid for? And that won't work.
Yeah, this can be anything.
If they don't work in a creative field. So sorry if that's the case. I don't know who your next guest is. But
me neither. No, yeah, I do. But
actually, I thought of a similar question, but something more general. Like, what was your biggest project so far? And maybe even taking it further, what is your biggest project so far that you were afraid of, but you got to do anyways? You know.
Yeah.
So that there's a story behind.
Links to what we just talked. I'll try to ask Martin's question first, and if it works, perfect. Yeah. Otherwise, I can just adapt it to yours.
Sure.
All right. So this brings us to the very end of today's episode. Thank you very much, Anastasia and Martin, for taking your time and spending, this afternoon, this coffee time, tea time, whatever your time is with us, Splutters.
And, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all the insights on game ER and your background. So we learned a lot with it. So, Explorers, thank you very much also for staying all the way till the very end of this episode. And we were able to dive into this fascinating world and synergy between video games, cluster, policymaking, technology, art, creativity, and so on. But thank you all listeners for tuning in. And as you all know, Efecto Cascada is available on all streaming platforms, starting from YouTube, because this is a video podcast, all the way to Spotify and Amazon Podcast. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any episode or Cascade funding opportunity. So until next time, Explorers, let's keep captivating the fascinating world of innovation together. See you.